Hello YouTube, and on today's video I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Retrobit 2.5 GHz wireless N64 controller. So, let's get to it. Alright, so taking a look at the Retrobit 2.4 GHz wireless controller, as you guys can tell, it looks pretty much exactly like their wired model. Right here we have the SUI model because I couldn't find my actual Retrobit Tribute 64 controller. But yeah, it looks near identical to this, and it feels basically the same. I think they improved the D-pad a little bit. I think they made the D-pad a little bit bigger, but I'm not exactly certain on that. But overall, it feels about the same. But the big thing is, you know, no wire at the top. It's a wireless controller, so naturally you get a receiver and everything to plug into your system, which is really cool. It supports USB-C, which is great because most things nowadays should support USB-C. And one thing I did notice that is a bit different between this and the SUI and the Tribute 64 is the shoulder buttons, the Z buttons. They have these tongles. I don't know how to explain it, but it's more akin to a modern controller, and that's probably because they built this with Switch and PS3 control support as well. So that's probably why they did that. I don't think it impacts too much though. But yeah, overall it feels pretty much the same as their original Tribute model, which is a good thing because I thought that was a really comfortable and nice controller to use. So let's get into some demonstrations and whatnot. Alright, so the first feature I really want to highlight with this controller is the fact that it supports vibration without the need of a rumble pack. So that's really cool. The vibration is a little bit on the faint side, but you definitely can hear it. Here's a video clip of it in action. So as you guys can tell, the vibration is a little bit on the weaker side, but it doesn't matter too much. You can definitely feel it while you're playing games. And moving on, I started to play this thing with several of my favorite N64 games, starting with, of course, Sin and Punishment, which is probably my actual favorite Nintendo 64 game. I think I played through this around 3 or 4 times with this controller, and I didn't notice input delay or anything like that. I am playing this game on normal right here, which I'm not as familiar with, so that's kind of why I'm getting my butt kicked a bit. But I'm not noticing any real differences in performance between this and my wired controller. Next up, I wanted to try and test the dead zone on this controller, just see if I can get some type of read on the calibration and whatnot. So I started to play some Goldeneye N64. This is one a lot of people always tell me to test games with, and I'm happy to oblige. So I don't notice the difference between this and an original N64 controller as much as I did with the original Tribute 64, that being the wired one. And as you guys can see from some of this footage of Goldeneye here, I'm able to get headshots with the sniper fairly easily. And that's kind of a good sign to me, because if this was too sensitive, the headshots wouldn't be very possible, I suppose, for lack of a better term. So I don't think the dead zone is as bad as it could be. Next up, I decided to play some Toy Story 2, and the reason being, well, one, this is one of my more favorite 3D platformers on the system. It was one I had as a kid, and I have a lot of fond memories of it. And two, because this game, like GoldenEye, has a first-person mode where if you're using a controller where the stick sensitivity is too high, like it was with the original Retrobit Tribute 64, the sensor or the aim reticle will just go all over the place. And with this one, it's controlling like a normal N64 controller stick. I'm really happily pleased about the results of this reticle test. Next up, I figured I would show off the fact that this thing is compatible with the Nintendo Switch. It's also marketed to be compatible with the PlayStation 3 and PC if you hook it up through those as well, I assume. And it works and everything. I just kind of feel like pointing out that This isn't something. This isn't a controller I think you would buy for the Switch, PC, and PS3 compatibility. This is a controller that feels more like something you would just buy simply for the N64 usage. I do think it is really cool, though, that it supports those things. It's super neat, and it's a super cool feature, and I'm glad it's here, as it makes the price point of this thing a little bit easier to swallow. Lastly, I want to mention the fact that this controller is $40, which is a little steep to me. 40 is quite a bit of money. I mean, for context, for $30 more, you can get a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which has gyro aim and HD rumble support and NFC technology, all this fancy stuff. Meanwhile, this is a Nintendo 64 controller that has rumble, which is really cool. But other than that, it doesn't really have too much special going on for it besides the Switch and Steam support. So $40, it's a little steep, but I think given the quality of this thing, I think it's worth it. I also want to point out that the Hyperkin Admiral is also $40, and so is the Retrofighter's Brawler 64 wireless controller, which, don't worry, at some point I am going to cover that thing. That's also $40, so it's kind of a pick your poison thing for a wireless N64 controller solution right now. Go nuts. So overall, do I recommend the Retrobit 2.5 gigahertz wireless N64 controller? Yes, but only if you don't like wired controllers. Like, if you have something against these, then go with this. But if for whatever reason you're like me and you kind of don't really care if it's a wired or wireless controller, I would just still stick with the SUI pad. It's cheaper. It's a ton cheaper. It's only like $12. This is $40. And it's got fairly good build quality. I'm still using the same one I had from when I reviewed this like 8 months ago, something like that. So overall, I can recommend this very confidently to you guys, but it really just comes down to if you actually want a wireless N64 controller. So that's going to do it for today's video, you guys. If you like this video, like it down below, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, all that wonderful stuff. And have a good day, YouTube. Peace.